Hey, what's up guys? This is Anthony from Flag Capture Gaming, and for this video we are going to be reviewing Batman Arkham Knight on the Xbox One. Now this game is kind of following up a semi-failure in the Batman Arkham Origins game, which I personally liked, but it had a lot of bugs. And Arkham City was really good, and this is the direct sequel to that game, and I think it does carry the mantle very well. It really does continue very well. But before we get into the actual review, I just want to mention the graphics. This game looks absolutely fantastic. The character models, the texturing, the lighting, everything looks so good. For a next-gen game, as of all the ones I've seen, this is the best. I haven't seen anywhere near as good as this one. This one blows Destiny out of the water. It's just really sharp looking. Even the hair looks good. Occasionally you'll have an issue with the eyes where they look a little fake, but that's probably going to be an issue as long as we don't have pre-rendered CGI. So I think that's an acceptable thing, but even the fabric looks really good. So one other thing I want to touch on is the DLC. We'll get into the rest of the review afterwards, because this is kind of like a non-fundamental thing since DLC doesn't technically count as the game. We get two that I'm going to review, which is the Harley Quinn and then the Red Hood DLC. So Harley Quinn, her DLC is really straightforward. You start off in just some regular combat, as you almost always do, and she plays just about the same as you would expect any of the other characters to play. Of course, her individual moves are unique, the animations, but the combat is virtually identical. Instead of batarangs, she throws little exploding things that don't actually explode, just incapacitates people. Basically plays the exact same way. I found her a lot of fun for this straight-up combat, especially when she uses the baseball bat. I thought that was a nice touch. It looks cool. She has nice animations. But then once you go from that, you go into kind of like a Predator scenario where you go into one or two different rooms and have Predator encounters. Well, the problem with that is she doesn't have a whip like Catwoman. She doesn't have a grappling hook, so she moves very awkwardly. And she also doesn't have any silent moves. So even when you sneak up on people, it brings everyone else in the area, and it just makes it an unpleasant experience, so I didn't really enjoy it. I thought it was really shoehorned in. And then finally we get one little mini-boss, which is Nightwing, and it's really just jump over him and hit him in the back over and over again while fighting a couple of policemen. It's super repetitive and super boring. The whole DLC was really bland. It took about 10 minutes to finish, and didn't really add anything. I mean, I know it was a prequel, but that was it. All you do is break into a Bloodhaven and rescue Poison Ivy through these little mini encounters, and that was it. So it was pretty disappointing, even though it looked cool and I like Harley Quinn and could have been fun. I felt like they just didn't do a real great job with that, so it was a little disappointing. And then having Harley Quinn beat Nightwing one-on-one, it didn't really fly. So now we can talk about Red Hood, which is a little bit more fun, a little bit better, other than just being the fact that he's Red Hood and has guns and looks cool. He plays mostly the same again as Batman this time. Instead of batarangs, he uses his guns, which is a nice touch, but they don't actually kill people unless you do like a finishing move. So, I mean, they can if the guy's already weak, but it's just kind of counterintuitive to have guns and then shooting people and not dying, but that's okay. You can't just kill everybody with guns right off the bat. That would get boring. As far as his other moves, instead of using the cape, he does a kick. Otherwise, he plays pretty much the same. He does have the grappling hook, so that helps. His Predator missions, I mean, it runs basically the same. You do a couple of regular combat things, then you go into Predator, and then you go fight the boss again. So it's really short, it's about 10 minutes, but at least the Predator ones in here are actually pretty fun, because he does play basically like Batman, except he has really cool looking takedowns. So that's nice. He snaps necks and uses guns and stuff. So his combat, and then the fact that he has the grappling hook and can do silent takedowns, made it a whole lot more fun to do, and the fact that it's Red Hood made it even better. So it was basically like playing the regular Batman missions, but using a cool character to break it up a little bit. So despite the fact that his mission was really short, just like Harley Quinn's, it was still more fun. I did enjoy playing as him. They're so short. And then once you get done with all of the Predator stuff, you get to the final fight, which is Black Mask. So all you do is fight his goons, and then he'll draw his pistol on you, and then you just tap Y to dodge, and then you can go fight him, or you can just stay close to him and keep fighting him as you're fighting the goons. So it's just really not very creative, not very involved, pretty basic, in fact. I felt like his was even easier than any of the other bosses in the game, despite the fact that there are very few. just because he's not really, he doesn't do anything but stand there and let you beat him up for the most part. So it was kind of bland, I thought. Did look cool, and then the cutscene at the end I really liked, but it wasn't particularly enthralling. It didn't really add much again. It was just a little bit of a prequel. So I guess it was okay, but the DLC, not too impressive. It was very bland for the most part. So it was fun to play as Red Hood, but Harley Quinn left a little bit something to be desired. And I think if Red Hood wasn't Red Hood, people wouldn't have cared that much about that either. So don't worry about the DLC too much. Now let's get into the actual gameplay. The menus function exactly as you would expect them to. I mean, slightly interface differences, but mostly it's the exact same type of menu as before. You have all your side missions and your AR challenges. In fact, if you played any of the other games, you should be able to navigate the menus without really thinking too much about it. And you get the overworld map. It functions basically the same. It is a gigantic map this time. We'll get into that a little bit more as we talk about the Batmobile, but everything's basically the same. You can see all the things you need to see. Once you locate them in game, you'll see them on the map, and that's fine. Then you have your character bios, your Wayne Tech and your Riddler stuff. The character bios are nice. You get to check out all the guys as you're progressing. And then your Wayne Tech, you have all these different categories. It's in this honeycomb system now, but one unlocks the next and that kind of thing, and you have a point progression system. So that works out about the same as before. And then same thing for the Riddler challenges and Riddler trophies. You can check these out here. Once you unlock them, they tell you where they are. So as far as the combat goes, it's mostly the same combat. If you've played the other games, you know how the combat works, and it's basically the same. I mean, there are little tweaks and flourishes here and there that are different. There are supposedly more enemies in-game. Unfortunately, I never really encountered them. If you're just patrolling the city on foot, you barely fight anybody, and they don't even count for XP unless they're part of one of like the side mission things. So that's kind of disappointing. But the regular fights are all about the same, except for one key difference, which is the Fear multi-takedown, which lets you target people if they're unaware and if you have it charged up. And you can target specific individuals while you're fighting in their instant kill type of things, so you can really clear out some of the more dangerous bad guys in a room before you take on the rest of them. So I really do appreciate that. And the other thing that was unique to this game and new is the co-op play, which isn't really co-op. There's no multiplayer in this game, but you have the dual play where you have two heroes on screen at the same time, and you can kind of control them both. So you'll control one while the computer controls the other, and then once you charge it up, you can do a team takedown where they both do a move and it looks really awesome. And then once you do that, it switches you automatically to the other character. And then you control them, and you can even switch back and forth without doing the super move if it's not charged. It's a lot of fun. I really did enjoy this. However, it's not that common in the game. There are some areas where it happens, of course, but for the most part, you're just Batman by yourself, which I guess is what they intended. Some, like this one in particular, you have to use the team takedowns to kill the boss. This is one of the mini bosses in the game, and there's very few. In fact, there's almost no mini bosses in this game, which is kind of disappointing, I thought, because it's very linear, the story. We'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But yeah, there's almost no mini bosses. One cool thing I did like about the co-op, which is already awesome, is the Predator mission here with Robin. You get to do these cool takedowns where he jumps in from the rafters and takes out the guy, and then you take off again. And then if you're also perched and he's perched, you can send him down to take out a guy, and then it automatically swaps you over to him. And that was kind of a fun way to swap between characters. So really the co-op combat, or the dual play combat, was awesome. I really, really enjoyed it. I wish you had more opportunities to do it though, because it was kind of sparse in the game for one of the features they were really touting prior to release. But it was a whole lot of fun, so I really do give them kudos for that. Now the next thing we need to talk about really is the Batmobile, because that was one of the other huge things that they really talked about prior to the game launching. So the Batmobile serves three main purposes. The first one is getting around the city, which is a whole lot of fun. The second one is combat, which is kind of fun. And then the third one is solving puzzles for Riddler and within the main story arc. So my favorite thing with the Batmobile was traversing the city. Getting into the Batmobile and launching out of it was a lot of fun. It really did help you traverse, and just summoning the Batmobile to get into it during a fight or something was a whole lot of fun. You know, you get to jump down and either fly right to it or call it in and jump in it as you're running, and it just looked cool and it was fun. And then shooting yourself out with the propulsion system so that you could start gliding or grappling hook or anything you want to do, that was also a whole lot of fun. So that's the first thing, is getting around the city. Felt really good, except the city felt really, really crowded. It's a lot bigger, obviously, but it's really crowded, really narrow, and kind of hard to control the Batmobile, but when you do get it, it's a lot of fun. So that's the first thing. The second thing is chasing things and shooting them or trying to destroy things. And that's not as much fun, because most of the time, the things you're chasing are a lot faster than you, and it's really hard to keep up, especially when you're in like one of the side missions where the thing you're chasing is flying. It's almost impossible. It's really hard to control the Batmobile in these narrow streets, and then the things that are flying don't even follow the road, so it really wasn't a lot of fun. It felt kind of shoehorned in. I feel like they could have done a lot better. It wasn't horrible. It didn't really hurt the game, but it didn't help the game very much at all. Then the other thing you're going to do in the Batmobile, for combat-wise, is kind of like these little arena things where you're getting attacked by a whole bunch of things, and then you have to survive and kill them. So all you really do is look out for the indicators that they're firing and dodge them. And once you dodge them, you shoot the things. And rinse, repeat over and over again until you kill everything or until you die and have to start over. It doesn't really feel like Batman. It feels really shoehorned in. It does kind of break up the gameplay, but it also kills the momentum of the game, I felt like also. It wasn't not fun, it just wasn't great. So I don't know, some people might like it. I felt like it didn't really need to be there as much as it was. But it's okay. I mean, the Batmobile is basically a tank, and you're fighting tanks, and it gets really repetitive. But it's not bad, so I don't know. That's going to be kind of like a personal thing, whether or not you like it. To me, take it or leave it. I didn't really care either way. It was in there. I didn't feel like it needed to be, but it was, so that's okay. And finally, the third thing you do with the Batmobile is just solve mini puzzles using the winch or the gun and things like that. And it doesn't really add much. It doesn't hurt. I think it's okay, but it's not great. So don't expect the Batmobile to be awesome unless you're jumping in or jumping out of it. And then we had to talk about the Riddler. Even though he's technically just a side mission, the Riddler does play a big part in this game just because he's the Riddler and he's a lot of fun. He's been in all the other games. So how this works is this is your only opportunity to see Catwoman and to play as Catwoman. It's always like a co-op thing because Riddler's captured her and you're working as Batman or Catwoman to save her. So you get these Riddler rooms. After you go off and do something as Batman in a different type of Riddler room that involves the Batmobile, you come back and you work with Catwoman to solve these puzzles. It's always some sort of co-op thing involved, so that's kind of fun. It's kind of unique to use the two different people to solve puzzles, and once you do, you're going to get a key. After a certain amount of keys, you get to take the bomb collar off of her neck, and that's why Riddler is making you do this stuff, because he's trying to kill her, and if you can solve all these riddles, you can save her from dying by taking the bomb thing off of her neck. So that was kind of a fun way to give him purpose and to put Catwoman in the game without actually putting her in the game. That's another thing, is if you don't play side stories, you're going to see very few actual Batman characters, which is kind of disappointing. I think the main story is lacking quite a bit. But anyway, once you take the bomb collar off of her neck, then you're usually going to get into a segment where you have to fight some of his Riddler robots that look like Sonny from iRobot. It's a really fun scenario most of the time because you're fighting as Batman and Catwoman doing the dual play combat, and then you're fighting all of these robots. Now, the blue robots are for Batman to hit, and if he hits a red one, it zaps him like one of the electrical guys, and then same thing for Catwoman. She can only fight the red ones. If she hits a blue, it's a problem. You do a team takedown, and you can kill any of them any way you want to. It's kind of fun to switch back and forth while you're fighting, to have to take out the different enemies, even though the computer is going to control the other character. You're much more effective. So I really enjoyed the Batman-Catwoman team-ups. Thought that was really well handled, and fighting the robots is kind of a nice change of pace rather than fighting goons all the time. So that was a lot of fun. So let's get into the story of this game. The story features almost no real Batman characters. Harley Quinn does show up a little bit, like halfway through the game, but it's very forced. I feel like they didn't do a great job handling it, and it only lasted for a really short time. So as much fun as it is to see the classic characters, she wasn't one of them that was in it a whole lot, so that was kind of disappointing. Her missions were very short, fighting against her anyway. You don't play as her in the story. And then Joker, he is in the game, but he's already dead. So there's not a whole lot going on with him other than hallucinations, and that gets really annoying. He shows up almost all the time, whether you're in little other story missions and he just shows up to ramble on about stuff, or if you're just patrolling, he will show up for that too. And like I said, it gets really repetitive, really annoying. It really hurts the flow of the game. I did not like it, and I think Joker is obviously the best character, best villain, one of the best rogues, but having him show up randomly throughout the game, it got really, really tiring. If you're walking around rooftops and things, he'll show up. just saying the same stuff over and over again and constantly irritating you. I felt like it really hurt the game. He does have a few cutscenes later on in the game, especially toward the end, that are actually pretty well done, and I like those, and I like that they brought the character back for that kind of stuff. But again, it didn't really fit the game. It felt to me like Scarecrow was there just so that they could have an excuse for Joker to be there because of the fear toxin. And I don't want to spoil too much, but there are other reasons why Joker's here in Batman's head. I don't want to get into that, but it still felt very forced. I feel like they kind of regretted killing him off in the last game, so they did this to put him back in the game, and it didn't work out as well as they were hoping. For me, anyway, I thought that the Joker part wasn't great. Ivy is one of the main characters, actually. She's helping you fight Arkham Knight and Scarecrow, so she's in the game probably more than any other supporting character. They did a really good job with her character model and did a good job with the voice acting, and just really took a character that's not the most interesting and did a good job making her important. So I thought that was pretty cool. The one bad thing about it is oftentimes she's summoning these kind of ancient dragon plants, which felt, even for the Batman universe, it felt a little unrealistic. These giant plants that come out of the ground and help you do things. It's not. It took me a little bit out of the universe, because why are these giant plants underground like that? So that's a little strange. They don't actually play that much of a role. I mean, they do story-wise, but gameplay-wise, it doesn't really add too much. So I guess it's not a big deal, but it's something to note. It does take you a little bit out of the more serious universe. So then we have Arkham Knight, the supposedly new enemy, and this is where it's going to get spoilery, so be aware. Arkham Knight, your fights with him revolve around him being in a tank for this one, so you have to fight him in a tank. That's kind of boring. It's not particularly interesting to use the Batmobile in these combat scenarios, so that's your first real fight with him, and it's fine, but it's just really repetitive again. So the Batmobile doesn't really add anything in this case. And then the next one is another Batmobile thing where he's chasing you around in this giant drill, which is also really repetitive and really just not fun. It's not a problem, but it's not great. So it's another, I think, unnecessary break in the gameplay that hurts the momentum and doesn't help the character progress too much. So that's kind of disappointing. And then lastly, when you're going to fight him, you're going to get into some Predator rooms. And it's basically the same rooms over and over again, and he's perched up on a ledge, and you have to clear out the room if you want to, or don't, and just kind of sneak past the bad guys. And then you just basically grapple up to where he is and take him out. So you'll see here, you can stop the drone from doing anything, and then you're going to want to stop the bad guys in the area. That makes it a lot easier if you take them all out first. There's no time limit or anything, so it's super easy. There's 7 bad guys plus him maybe. So you take out all the bad guys, and then you just have to work your way over to him and dodging his sniper rifle. Because if he shoots you, he kills you really fast, and once he sees you, it's pretty hard to get him to lose you. So it's pretty easy, though. You just hop in a grate or something like that and go up underneath him. And once you're underneath him, you can do whatever you want because he can't see you. So you can take all the time you want. Using the detective vision makes it super easy. It gets progressively more challenging as you go, but even still, even the hardest one, I just ran right through the hardest segment and didn't even try, and I did it really quickly. So you can see fighting him, really not interesting because you don't really fight him. You just do a regular Predator thing, and then you'll see here, all you have to do is grapple up to him, and it gives you kind of like a little cutscene, and that's it. You do that 3 times, and you're done. So you're not fighting Arkham Knight anymore. You do find out here that Arkham Knight is actually, big surprise, Jason Todd, which is really not good. It's not a good payoff at all since they said it was going to be a new character. Really disappointing. And Scarecrow, the main bad guy in the entire game. They were really talking up Scarecrow, and I thought that's not a good idea because Scarecrow can't carry a whole game. And I was right because he can't, because he's not barely in the game at all. He's on screen for like a total of maybe 10 minutes, and they're all cutscenes like this. You don't really do any of the missions like you did in Arkham Asylum, where you're Batman, he's kind of got the over gaze looking at you and you have to dodge him, and in the Scarecrow universe, whatever. You don't do any of that. It's all story, and it's all just him talking in the background, and it's really just a vessel for them to get Joker back for the most part. There's really no good story for Scarecrow other than he wants to take over Gotham, and his way of doing that is to have Arkham Knight do that. So it's just, I think the story was really poorly handled here. The Scarecrow didn't really add anything. He, even the fear toxin that does get used in the game, it's all happening somewhere else for the most part. It doesn't really affect Batman other than Joker, so it's kind of disappointing. So, final thoughts on the game. Really well done. The mechanics are great. The graphics are great. Everything that you expected from the other games is back in it, and it's working really well and even better. There's no multiplayer, so that's a good thing. The co-op is a bad thing, though, other than the fact that you get to play as other characters. There's no true co-op in the game. The story is easily the weakest part. That's what's kind of disappointing about this. If you do the side missions, you'll come across a lot of Batman-type villains and Batman-type scenarios, but if you don't do the side missions, it really doesn't feel that much like a Batman game. The main story is so militarized and linear and uninteresting that it really detracts a lot. So if you're in it just strictly for the single main storyline, then you're going to be disappointed. Gameplay-wise, you won't be disappointed at all, and if you spend the time to go through the side missions, that won't be disappointing either, so it won't be a problem. So I do recommend this game. It did play really well. I had a lot of fun doing it. And I'd say it was probably like a 9 out of 10. It played really, really well, but for me, the story was lacking enough, and the Batmobile didn't add enough that I couldn't give it a perfect score, but still easily the best Batman game out of the bunch. Thanks for watching, guys. I hope that was informative and you enjoyed the video, and make sure you subscribe to the channel so you can see more videos like this and other fun stuff. In the meantime, keep playing.